All right, guys. Welcome to the GPZ Decklist stream. We didn't have a Decklist stream last month, so hopefully this will make up for it.
Wow.
Yeah, so let's look at who's here.
Hello, I'm Gao. It's good to be back.
Let's see. Oh yeah, and
I'm
if
from
any of the
Wiki-
volumes sound off, then please tell us because I can't tell if the volumes are too low or not.
I'm from Ricky's most controversial videos, maybe.
That depends.
I'm Test, also known as AJSO. I was the one who put together the deck that won last month's GP, and maybe it'll happen again.
Yeah. So, we got a lot more people right now.
We do, but it seems as though many are non-participants.
Well,
I'm just chilling.
Yeah, let's just start.
If you're not in the stream, maybe you could just watch it.
Yeah, you could just watch the stream.
Okay, so the rest of Kiki is not here. Did we call him?
My mic wasn't set up. I was plugging in my mic.
Well, welcome.
Well, anyways, if you're in the stream, then please click the link to the spreadsheet and add your own name.
Okay.
Anyways, so let's stop dilly-dallying around and, well, actually, no, we should talk about the new set. So this is the first GP after...
Two new sets, actually.
Yeah, after the two new sets, which is...
Yeah, the stage presents the Never-Ending Act and MSL, MSEM Legends.
The wild cards.
Which is a wild card set. It is also... MSL only has... a very low amount of new cards, but
it's
they are
96
all quite
actually.
Impactful. Yeah,
a number of them were bonus sheet reprints of sets from other formats, submissions to MSEM Survivor, as well as a couple of, as usual, the bonus sheet also contains cards from sets that didn't quite make it in this year.
Yeah.
I will say, because of the way these kinds of sets release, I didn't manage to get out a Brews article with it, but holy shit, are some of these cards impactful. You'll be seeing, and obviously the elephant in the room is that me, Water the Weeds, and TrueQ got Toka nerfed pre-GP, but besides that, many of these cards are also exceptionally impactful, and I will be displaying over the next sort of while.
All right, so let's actually just get into the decks. So first up, we got Splash Cat on big. Wait, what is this sorted by? Because this is not alphabetical order, right?
It's not
by the order of submission. Splash Cat was the first to submit.
Oh.
Well,
it was like that last time too.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, sure. So let's start with Splash Cat's deck then.
It's Big Red. This seems like a standard list as far as the lists that are not on Fireweaver are.
Yeah.
I think the big change is, if any, is Careless Violence on the sideboard, which I'm not sure I've seen since Weaver.
I think some. Well, right. I've only seen this card in Weaver sideboards.
She was saying something about how she needed to fix the deck. Splash Cat was tearing up League for a couple of runs with variations of Big Red. She had tried out Dragons, but said that it just seemed like a worse version of Big Red. So this,
which I mostly agree with, actually. I think the big difference is print.
Later down.
But I think overall Big Red is a stronger deck. I think ultimately the extra copies of Emissary don't do as much as I would like them to, compared to the just higher overall card quality. But yeah, standard list, 22 lands, which is lower than usual, I think, but mostly just standard. I'd say solid 7.5 or 8.
Yeah.
This appears to be optimized to hit 3 drops. That's usually what you want the 22 lands for.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you also have the Ritual guy, the Leaf Down Sizzle Mage.
Yeah, you also have 7 more mana sources to get you to Tunu. It's fine. It's just I think I'm just used to 23, but I could be wrong. I don't play this archetype. I'm not that sort of into the nitty gritty of it.
I'll give it 3 chili peppers because Big Red's always interesting to watch.
If I'm going to do a spiciness rating, I think I have to do 1 because of how much of an established archetype this is and how much of a sort of standard
Okay,
list
fine.
this is. But this is from my perspective as a sort of a brewer.
Next, add yourself to the spreadsheet.
Hmm.
Or no, wait, not a test. I meant.
Like I said, I can't find it.
Oh, did I not link it to?
All right.
I don't remember
No.
seeing a link.
Test is there. Or
Okay.
did one of you, the other picture
Okay.
do that?
I'll have to.
Yeah, that is Big Red.
Yeah,
It's Big Red.
It's Big Red.
it's Big Red. Let's move on.
Now, this next deck, I actually have quite a bit to say about. This is a Pipsqueak original. It is Jund Gerald.
Gerald, Fugitive. Can you explain to us what this card does?
When it enters the battlefield or any other creature, you can target an instant or sorcery in your graveyard and then cast it for free by paying life equal to its mana value. This card is it's a 2/3 with lifelink for Jund, and this card's fucking incredible. This card is just an incredible newcomer. Just coming hot off of Act of the Neverending Act. This card
It is not her list. Not
yes.
Pip's list, that is.
Is it not?
Pip had pushed some Gerald lists, but I believe Scribble constructed this by themselves.
Well, good looking out. Good to remember. I am noticing actually that the Sophia is not in the main deck, which it was with Pip, because Sophia and Gerald is just such a strong interaction. But I think honestly, this is just This is just sort of low synergy mid range, which we haven't seen in a hot minute in MSEM. No, that's not true.
Well, you know how it is with Jund.
Mono black and Big Red, but this is Jund. We're Junding. We've got BJP and Gerald as sort of win conditions with the capital W and C. But we also have Earbeck and Valerie tokens to close games out.
Valerie is a condition all on her own.
Yeah, and we have Callian, who is actually going to see a significant amount of action as the backside of Maru's Horde. Thanks to Gerald, I think Callian is significantly stronger in the context of a deck containing Gerald.
Yeah, it triggers off everything.
It triggers off of whatever you want. I think this deck is strong. I think this deck is decently positioned. I would maybe worry about this deck's ability to answer Kaelin Horrorwind, among other things.
He has Rot in the board.
Is there?
Yes.
Oh, yes. And it's tutorable off of the councils. Okay, no, that's fine then. Then
I'll give it 4 chili peppers. It seems very interesting.
I'd say a solid 7, and I'd give it another solid 4 chilies. Yeah.
Ray Jund.
Big fan of Jund.
Yeah, Jund them out. Except this time you actually get to do some flashbacky things.
They actually go out.
Next, we have a Fireweaver deck. Gale?
Hey. So this is...
This is Fireweaver 8-sack.
I see you finally got a chance to play it.
This deck is incredible. I do truly believe. So the only new cards in it are Scion of Silence in the main as a card I will never play again, but it's a tech answer that we can fetch for Kaelin. That can also sort of answer some other key threats. And we're playing it over Olten Surveyor. And Tiger of the Drums out of the sideboard as a way to side out 5 drops that are bad in the matchup. And replace them with a 5-drop that is extremely good basically whenever, as long as you can pay 2 mana for it. With that being said, if the basic conceit of this deck is foreign to you, I invite you to read What Lurks Beyond and Selective Breeding, and I think the rest will fill in.
Oh no, you also have to show them what the flashback creatures do.
Yes, selective breeding, What Lurks Beyond, and then Fiery Truthseeker and Kaioro Grave Betrayer are all sort of the bones of this deck. I might, again, because What Lurks Beyond can fetch from Graveyard, I've been thinking maybe I will cut down one Kaioro, one Truthseeker, but the second Kaioro and the second Truthseeker have been good enough times that I'm holding off on that change for the moment. Beyond that, this deck's sort of main win condition is Kaioro enabling you to just sort of churn out a constant stream of 5, 4, and 6 drops that kill your opponent.
Oh yeah, you also have to mention Pensive Songwriter. That's another thing that lets it turbo on turn 3, right?
Yes. Yes. You can. This deck has no combo, but in exchange, you can just sort of answer anything in the game, essentially. Even more so with Scion of Silence, you can just sort of you can answer any permanent type within reason. You can toolbox into other toolboxes by podding into a Fireweaver, and you can toolbox into other toolboxes by Fireweavering into a Chaos is Your Redemption or a Tali's Council.
Yep, I mean, it's a very Yu-Gi-Oh-like deck.
You do get to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's very difficult because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is exceptionally difficult.
I like how we used the term extender while we were discussing this deck.
We did. Anyway,
yeah.
I think it should come as no surprise that I have crafted this deck, considering that my favorite archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! History is Tearlament. And this joke is only funny to a small subset of the audience, but I'm dead serious about that. Anyway.
And anyways, 5 chili peppers because this is 8 sack.
I love it.
And for the same reason, I would have to rate it to 0 if I were doing ratings at all.
Wait, who else was talking?
Oh, me. I was saying I love getting my butt kicked by 8 sack.
I know, right? Especially if I'm the one doing it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I swear I played against only you in League as I resubmitted and then just got my butt kicked by 8 sack when I was starting. Like 3 times.
I think this deck is powerful. I think it has a few matchups that it just cannot get over, but many matchups that just cannot get over it.
Yeah. So let's move on to Nyx, who is not playing Kalen, despite having Kalen in the deck name. I was going to be
I thought about it a lot. It was this or Kalen. It's like, this is my one opportunity to play Kalen before it gets nerfed to the ground, even though I don't...
I should probably show what Kalen does for the people at home.
Anyway, I am playing Burn.
Does that beat Kalen?
No.
Specifically, this is a modification of last month's winning Burn.
Yeah.
The modifications in this case are, we took out the 4 She-Who's commands because they're nerfed to the ground now. We put in 1 extra land to make things just a bit more consistent after some observations last month. And we now have 3 Bright Flame Phoenixes because they have an average damage output comparable to Brazen Sacrilege.
And it doesn't beat Kalen?
You know what sucks?
It beats Kalen by virtue of being able to kill on turn 4 most of the time. And Kalen... Kalen is on the draw. Kalen just dies.
I played.
It also
I was
beats
in
Kalen game 1.
against Kalen. I mean, I was playing a ton of games with Rec in private, just trying to figure out how to play this matchup. And just after sideboards, it's just very difficult for Burn.
That's Burn in general. It really depends on how much people sideboard against it. The other modification is you have included a Flaming Point technique. We discussed that in private over how to modify the deck for the coming meta.
Yeah. And also, I can't play Requiem added Guiding Light to his sideboard after learning I was playing Burn.
Well, so actually, I want to say, so you know how Shiho's command got nerfed? You know, pre-nerf Shiho's command would have been great against Kalen, right? Because it makes them sacrilege, not legendary.
Yeah.
This is true.
And now it targets the creature, so now Kalen is immune to it.
Maybe we can get them to change Shiho's command again so that the 4th mode doesn't target.
Oh, sure. Let's go back
Yeah.
to the days of 3 damage plus 2 cards drawn, plus an edict, plus L, plus your control player.
Yeah, I understand the nerf. I'm just
Yeah.
hoping here that I get to be faster than everyone else pulling their shenanigans.
Well, that was part of the discussion. I and a couple of people got together and we talked it over. We concluded that this month was going to be full of greed, just greed as far as the eye can see. So there will be a few decks here from the people that I spoke to that are out to get these greed wagons. They are out to punish people whose game plans start only on turn 4, and Burn is one of those.
So what
I'll
will
be
happen
bringing up
if
the others as we get to them.
So what happens if your predictions are wrong and then everyone's playing these anti-greed decks?
Then maybe we'll have an interesting VP.
All right. Well,
I mean, Burn is just also good. Like,
It's
I don't
good.
think
It's decent.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to be against a bunch of greedy decks for Burn.
It doesn't necessarily.
But it's funnier when you kill someone on turn 4 before they've done anything of note.
It also makes you
I
think
suppose.
less while playing the GP, which is like a great bonus.
Yeah,
No,
it makes the matches
I don't
faster,
agree.
which is great for
I do not
commentary.
agree.
Exactly.
I do not agree at all.
I get to ruin. I get to ruin
This-
Ricky's commentary.
This specific
ending
version of
games
Burn
fast.
does require a bit of thinking ahead with regard to how you're going to sequence your cards. Because if you mess up the timing on a Brazen Sacrilege and you have no targets for it, or if you mess up the sequence on a Bright Flame, it's real embarrassing.
It's fine.
You're trying to squeeze every card for what it's worth. So
Yeah.
please do me a favor and think while you're playing the deck. Practice a bit. Because if you miss lethal,
Especially if you're on commentary.
By thinking.
hmm.
It's fine. I'll just
Yeah.
miss all my triggers.
Next, if you're on
Yeah,
commentary
we
with, and Nyx is also commentating, Test. If you're commentating Nyx's game, will you like,
Oh, I'm gonna get flamed.
yeah, bright flamed? You mean?
almost
Oh, yeah.
blew a gasket that one time Marina kept a hand with one land.
All right.
All right. So
Uh,
since it's Burn, 2 chili peppers, and let's move on. Unless anyone
I
else has
have
anything
16
else to say.
land Burn one. That
We
would
have-
regularly keep one land in hands, and they
We
work
have-
out sometimes, but that's different.
Yeah.
we have a Kalen list. It is just the standard Kalen list, actually.
Cool time for music
Yeah.
to come up.
Guess how he got that? I mean, guess how Requiem got that list?
I mean,
Sure is.
does someone have a
each of these
soundboard
Encore plus
open or
Galen.
something? Or is it someone just?
And it's still running Ulton Surveyor.
Well, I mean, Alton Surveyor is fine.
Does lots of things.
Okay, it's running 4 Celestial Banishments in the sideboard. Against.
Yeah, that's to kill Kalen's.
Yeah. Something that I did notice with this Kalen deck is that you can get 5 colors really easily. So I'm surprised that this deck isn't like these sorts of decks aren't splashing more for stuff. Because the mana's
I
really
used to
good, right?
splash, Flare Blitz, but Flare Blitz just isn't good enough of a card.
Is there like
Okay.
random red or black cards that this deck really wants to splash for that these decks aren't splashing for? That they should?
One mana equipment that discards, but otherwise not really.
Yeah. But I guess Celestial Banishment from sideboard is a good black splash just against the mirror.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Can you
I think this-
Yeah.
I think if I were to sort of evaluate this deck, I think this is a strong deck of a high power level that is elevated to a fucked up deck by Blossoming Expanse and by the elephant in the room, Judge's Decree.
Yeah. Can you explain how the interaction works?
You cast Judge's Decree, both triggers go in the stack. Or you can't. No, one trigger goes in the stack. I'm sorry. You activate the ability of Kalen before the first trigger resolves, and then the second trigger will just resolve harmlessly, and then the first trigger will exile something permanently.
Yep. So you got the hard lock, sort of.
You get a counter a spell every single turn.
Or exile a permanent if your opponent decides to hold their spells.
Yep.
Yeah. And besides that, just to mention the interaction again, well, Blossoming Expanse is a land that lets you play another basic when you play it, but it doesn't make mana by itself. But if you enchant it with either Arrive Surrounded by Petals or Unexplored Regions, or you have where's that? Terraformers. Yeah, then
or you bounce it with a rail line, then you can go mana positive.
Yeah, so and then you also have Kaelin to bounce your stuff and get value off that. So yeah, a really powerful deck that can get through a lot of cards, and also has the ability to ramp, and also has the ability to hard lock in the late game.
Yep.
And it's running 3 Guiding Lights on the board just because, from what I've heard, it's against Burn,
Because
right?
Burn won last month.
Nah.
That's a good enough excuse. Not accusing you of scouting or anything, right? Okay.
Yeah, I anti-scouted myself, I know.
Actually, can someone else fill in the spreadsheet with the players' decks, or the player names and whatever? Okay.
I'll be right back. My opponent wants to play round 1.
Ooh, are you gonna commentate yourself?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, let's do that. Or
All right.
you can do that.
Oh my god.
Bye.
Makes you serious. You gave them the list that boarded against you.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
All right, so unless we have anything else to say, let's move on to Draw Knight's deck. And what's Draw Knight even on?
Not good.
Rock
Draw
Kindred,
Knight-
they've got an Adam as their first mate.
It's full-time mid-range frog tribal.
It's mostly focused
Check out
also on tempo, from what I
Renidophobia.
can see. It's got Cursory Glance. It's got Megadonis.
Now,
I
I'm
don't
not
know
going to
about
rate
making good
this.
decks.
I'm not going to rate this, but it's funny.
I don't like making good decks, so
What's
It could be a good deck.
What's Luminescent Croaker doing this deck? Why are they playing a draft common?
I needed more frogs.
That fair enough. That's a fair.
But is there really
No,
nothing
no,
better
no.
than a draft common?
Yes,
There's
absolutely.
nothing-
It's a frog. Do you not know?
It's a frog.
It's a frog.
I wanted another
tribal.
2-dropper. I wanted another 2-dropper.
Unrelated, I'm going to look up who you're up against in round 1.
Sure. So what frog
It's,
synergies do you actually have?
Renidophobia. one drop makes a 1/1 frog, and then it's a curse, and then the enchanted player can't block frogs. All my creatures are unblockable if I play this on turn 1. And then
Sure.
it's just mid range.
Sure.
Sure. I love playing
And
my
you have
1 mana.
Adam.
Let him cook.
You have Adam
I'm
sometimes.
cooking. I'm in the kitchen.
I mean, all of your creatures being unblockable is like pretty good, but
Yeah, but look at the creatures.
yeah.
It's oozing Yagui or Yagawi.
Yagwai.
No, Yagui. I don't. Damn. I'm kicking myself for not playing retroactively, for not playing Celestial Banishment, because I looked at it, but I don't look at the meta or look at anything when I'm building my decks. So I don't know. Nothing I could have done about that other than, I don't know, try to make a good deck.
Don't worry.
That's stupid.
Cursory Glance is decent against Kaelin because it counters Kaelin, so you don't have to play Celestial Banishment.
You know, I'll say that I don't think your choice in removal spell is going to be what holds you back from performing here. I think you'll be
I'm trying to
fine.
make the idea as good as I can get it. It's a
Yeah.
good
And that
Well,
idea includes
4.
that
I
idea
appreciate-
includes Luminescent Croaker. Is
I
what, is what
appreciate your
do.
commitment to the bit.
It
What
includes
is-
frogs.
This is what I do. This is what I've been doing since I joined the format.
You know what?
Good job.
I'll give this deck 6 chili
Good
peppers
job.
just because you're really cooking here.
Honestly, you
Um,
could win games. Like,
Now,
I actually think this is not that bad.
Cell type
now
frogs.
there is one
Like, look,
other kind of
Luminescent Croaker isn't a good card, but
no.
Renidophobia is actually like pretty good, and it has
I-
reasonable support. Like,
I don't know.
I think you're stretching a lot of definitions by saying that, but
I think we should move on.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're up next on to Dead Souls.
Not Dead Souls exactly, or it's
shamans.
Yeah,
It's
Dead Shamans.
So, okay, so the interaction here is Ravik plus Hadak wins the game forever, but in most situations.
Basically, I only learned until recently that
makes
Hadak
sense.
is shaman. I don't know why it's a shaman. Like I don't think the sets were designed
lore.
together.
What?
Yeah, you
You
just
think dragons can't be shamans?
It's just lore.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Okay, so the way the deck works in sort of an extended TLDR is Leyline Invoker is a shaman. Dragon's Eye Descendant is a shaman.
Surprisingly.
And those form a coherent fair plan. Chai Li is also a shaman. And then Ravik and Hadak are your win conditions. Ravik on her own is already a reasonable board control tool and a reasonable inevitability tool. Ravik and Hadak means your opponent cannot ever resolve a creature for the rest of eternity, and they take 4 damage every time you breathe.
Unless it's Kalen.
Unless it's Kalen, in which case they
Kalen
can
still
act with
dies.
impunity because this deck seems to be missing the inbuilt Shaman Kalen answer, which there is actually.
What is it?
Yes. So in the version of this deck that I was building, and that I was maybe considering playing in League, but definitely not for GP, just because I love my deck too much. Ill-Fated Seer is a 3-mana shaman that you can fetch off of your tutors.
No, you can't.
You can fetch it off of selective breeding.
Okay, close enough.
And it edicts your opponent. And also it deals burn damage in matchups where that's not relevant. I think Ill-Fated Seer is an incredible card. I ended up putting 2 of it, I think, in my final list because I think this card is incredible.
I will say that edicts are not going to be good enough, like a majority of the time against the Kalen deck.
Yeah, because they can make tokens really easily.
They make a lot of tokens.
Yes. That being said, I do think you should still play. I think you should still play.
Yeah, like you can maybe do it.
And even if it's not answering Kalen, it is also answering creatures.
I guess.
There are a lot of hate creatures for this deck that sort of don't fully hose you, but make you operate on weirder angles. And there are a lot of just very powerful must-answery threats in the format right now, like Gerald as an example, like Performer as an example.
So I want to mention. I feel like this deck is missing. What's it called again? Moral Benediction. Like Moral Benediction is a card that is run in the original Dead Souls deck, and I feel like this card would also be really good in the Shaman's deck because you can reanimate your 3-drops and also ramp up. And this deck actually wants to ramp way more than Dead Souls because you have these selective breeding in Beck of the Wilds.
Now, the list I was playing was not actually on Beacon of the Wild, but was rather on an Unearth spell. I don't remember if it was Benediction or Unearth, with the logic that it sort of is more mana efficient, but operates on a similar level of selection, considering how much you can mill.
Yeah. I feel like this deck is missing just Unearth effects, because...
but I actually think the thing this deck is missing is mostly that this deck is not leaning into the toolbox angle. That Shaman has a significant amount of surprisingly relevant 8 cards in type, and I think that you could be taking more advantage of that to just sort of angle for more matchups.
Yeah, right.
I also think that you're playing a graveyard-centric deck, and your payoffs just aren't that.
No, your payoffs are great.
Your payoffs are good, but your payoffs are not
and
you're going to win the game maybe on turn 4.
You can very much win the game on turn 4 in this deck. I also think this deck is less graveyard reliant than other graveyard decks out there.
That is fair.
I think there are very rarely graveyard-related choke points, which there would be if you were playing an Earth. I will acknowledge.
It's literally just Leyline Invoker that cares about graveyard or cares about stuff from the
And
graveyard.
Dragon's Eye Descent, right?
Yeah, but your 5 Dragon's Eye Descent doesn't actually, or if your graveyard gets exiled when Dragon's Eye gets played, because you still get the benefit.
Yeah, you still, yeah. It's. I think this deck could be better. I think it's currently about a 7. I would give it a solid 4 or 5 chili peppers, but I think it has significant room to sort of improve.
I'll give it 5 chili peppers because it's really cool.
Yeah, to make better use of its deck slots, etc.
The game kind of waits. I don't have a column.
Okay, sure.
Here.
All right.
Have you already talked about your deck, or do you want us to jump to your deck right now?
Me?
No, the person who's leaving.
Wait, what?
What? Wait, sorry,
I'm leaving.
I'm not leaving.
No, I was
No.
saying I came late. So I don't have
I see. I
have a
misheard.
column
This
on
is
the
embarrassing,
document.
and this is also on stream, so I can't exactly edit it out. Cool.
Yeah, it's
Well,
Okay.
you something.
bad at Google Sheets. How do I do this?
Something. Not your
Yeah.
worth.
Not that.
On recording DAF.
Okay, but my previous gas I can actually edit out. Okay.
Yeah.
There we
No.
I should add it here.
What? Sorry. Can you repeat that? I wasn't listening. Okay. Well, anyways, we should probably move on if nobody else is saying anything.
We should.
Yeah. So
I've
test.
got dead air. So the next
Villainy.
up in the list is my deck, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Test.
So this was another one of the anti-greed decks. This is Villainy. It's a somewhat non-standard version of Villainy. It does not run Xanagan or Urbeck for that matter. During some of the simulations that I ran to try and optimize the deck, it was found that 5 mana generally falls outside the curve of what you can afford. So instead our win conditions are, in addition to Villainy, Ballast Descent, because Yawgmoth's will is good. What Ballast Descent does is it's an ETB legendary enchantment. It's one of the out-of-back gods where it has an ETB, and then if you have enough swamps or whichever land type is relevant to the god, you can flip it for a reasonably low cost and get an insane backside. So Ballast Descent is a 2-sided edict like Exuent. When it comes down, it makes both players discard cards, but it doesn't really matter if you discard some of your own things because the backside is, again, a Yogg's Well. You can play stuff from your graveyard.
Yeah.
Besides that, we're dipping into green for a few things. We're mostly doing it for Pithwelt because Abrupt Decay is one of the best cards ever printed in an environment. We're doing it for Whisperwood's Explorations because sometimes you lose your villainy and you'd like to get it back. You want to dig for your villainy, or you have a villainy and you want to spin your wheels with a Dark Bargain or a Miserable Discovery. Now, Miserable Discovery here is taking the slot of what would normally be Find Happiness in Misery, which is the leitmotif black card. That's sort of the Black Mirror to Plan Far, Far Away. It's just 2 draws for 2. But comparing the mana efficiency on that card to Miserable Discovery, which is a side grade of Dark Bargain, it seems somewhat worse, so we have cut it in favor of that. Additionally, Miserable Discovery can be found off of Whisperwood's Exploration, Find Happiness and Misery can't. In the sideboard, part of our anti-greed was to include Singularity's Grasp. As Sai noted in the deck building chat, many times a lot of the decks coming in are vulnerable to this, and just to be safe, we also included Rot.
I see you're very teched out against the Kalen matchup.
Yeah, but in a way that I think is non-intrusive. I think if I had any notes, I would say that I agree with your logic about Xanagan. I think Earbeck is a little more difficult to evaluate on that axis since Earbeck is also a 3-mana spell. I don't think it's necessary, but I think it is a potentially relevant choice. I think this list looks solid overall. Although
I'm surprised there's no white in the mana base.
I'm more
Why
surprised
shouldn't
that
there be?
there's.
Is it too difficult?
No, why should there be white? Just tell me why should there be white?
More colors for wilt, so that you can wilt things that cost.
Wilt
Oh,
is
right.
not
Wilt is
not
already
colors you've
white.
spent.
Okay, so
Wilt is not-
I'm just okay. Never mind. I don't know.
So-
What
okay,
Wilt is
don't-
not
don't-
colors you've spent, it's colors you've cast.
don't worry.
I
I
thought it was
yeah.
different card.
Don't worry. I also
No.
made that mistake when I first saw the card.
I thought it was like the augmented.
Yeah,
cards.
I know. That's also what I
Anyway.
thought.
If I had anything else to say, I would say the lack of celestial banishment is surprising. I think celestial banishment is quite a powerful spell as far as counter magic goes. Counter magic that is compatible with tap out control like villainy, and also is not blue.
Yes, Celestial Banishment did come up in the considerations. In terms of functional density, though, it seemed better to absorb its slots into the hand attacks.
Yeah, I agree. Like you want to be a tap out control deck, so like it's probably better to be proactive and then use Rot and Singularity's Grasp to answer the opponent's Kalins.
I can see that. Although
The best answer, though, the absolute best answer is to just hand attack them. Stuff like Singularity's Grasp
it's just to take the Kalin out of their hand.
Stuff like Singularity's Grasp and Rot are for emergencies. It's for when your opponent has the play on you, or your opponent manages to lock out your hand attacks, or they draw into a Kalin. You really do not want to take chances, because if they draw into the Kalin, there's nothing you can do, and at that point, what are you going to do? Just lose?
Your best bet is to just keep villainy in face until they die. Otherwise,
It's actually like a pretty reasonable thing to be doing, unless they find Decree.
yeah.
And that, the possibility of them establishing a lock is why we have the board wipes. And in general,
if they already
Kalin
have
is
the lock,
a...
the board whips don't do anything.
In general, Kalin is a Concord deck, so stuff
It's
like
true.
Rot just completely messes them up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am not trying to say that it's not good against Kalin. I'm just saying it's not an answer to Kalin Decree because they'll just decree the board whip.
Yeah.
If you give them the turn to do it.
Okay, so let me just I'll give the deck yes 3 chili peppers because it's a villainy deck.
It's villainy.
Yeah, like I don't really
Yeah.
like watching villainy decks. Yes, I'm sorry if that comment may have offended
I mean,
people,
it's
but
villainy.
No, that
Like, villainy is old news.
yeah.
it's a staple.
Well, next up we have
Dr. Chobrain on dragons. Okay, so
this is a better dragons lit. I will say off the bat, as a compliment to whoever built this, maybe it is Chillbrain. This looks better than every other dragons list I've ever seen. There are no random shitty one-offs that you will never actually tutor, but theoretically could. And your curve is actually significantly more reasoned. With that said, I think this is still just worse than Big Red, and I think ultimately you can actually just play Prince of Stars in Big Red if you want to.
Yeah. Actually, do you want to tell the audience what the
I
main?
don't know. Like, how many of these cards are cards you wouldn't play in Big Red anyway?
Ominous Dragon Caller and Pollet Pools and Dragon's Breath Throat Singer.
I mean,
Throat Singer, I think, is a bad card. Most of the time.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Well, I'd rather it's a worse card than what you could be playing in that spot, which is Ragavan.
Or Daisy.
I think Throat Singer is better.
Daisy is already in the
better
deck,
card
so
than
it's not as
Daisy.
much of a criticism as it would be otherwise.
Yes, which is why I only mentioned Ragavan by name. I also think Throat Singer is just clunkier than a lot of the other things that are good about this deck. I think.
Aaron
I also
says
think
that this is Purple's build, by the way.
Oh, it's the purple.
I mean, that's why it's good
deck.
instead of playing 7 one-off dragons.
One-offs.
Because
I'm surprised there's no
can deck builds.
Oh, shots fired.
Very, very well, famously. Purple Murasaki can deck build.
Who knew?
Who knew? The best deck builder in the format can deck build.
Who knew? The person that got into council because they were good at deck building can deck build.
Exactly.
I'm surprised there's no Judgment of How Ties.
think I remember reading a rationale about this. I think it may have been from Purple, but it's because that card is 4 mana.
I mean, yes. I don't know.
I think it's because like you'd rather just try to beat them instead of trying to answer them, right? Like you're the aggressor. You should just you're the beatdown. You're not the control. So no point in trying to run a board
You're the
wipe.
beatdown?
Yeah, no, big red is historically the beatdown.
You're the beatdown against Kalen.
You're the beatdown against a lot of things.
I think without judgment, this deck just will not beat Kalen. Like it's just not happening.
It can go faster than Kalen.
I think you're like very small percent to win.
Okay, how is Kalen answering a Prince of Stars on curve?
You just judgment it out.
Okay,
Or
what
you just decree it out.
Okay, so that's their first decree. Like that's.
I will remind you. I will remind you that Prince of Stars Cascade is a cast trigger.
Yeah.
Okay. Beyond that, I also think that this deck has a actually significant game against most things. I think the big thing you get from being dragons, besides the first mate, is Prince of Stars. I think Prince of Stars is an incredible card, and I think Ominous Dragoncaller finding your emissary and your Prince of Stars is a powerful thing to do. I think I dislike Throat Singer more than most people, because I think this card is it just has not done what I wanted it to every time I've put it in a deck. I think it feels like Daisy on the face of it, and then it isn't Daisy. When you
I agree.
Put it in your deck, although I do think I will say of note, this deck is actually not playing any 2-drops that don't trigger Throat Singer, which is good, and you should do that. If you're putting Throat Singer in your deck, every single 2-drop in your deck should trigger Throat Singer.
And you also, I also want to mention the 3 exhilarating prescience in the sideboard, because that's your plan against decks that want to go long.
Yeah. This is true. I mean, your plan besides Prince of Stars being an incredible way to go long. But yes.
So 5 chili peppers because it's a purple deck.
I'm giving it 5. I'm giving it 4 chili peppers, but not exclusively because it is a purple deck, but because of the qualities that purple puts in a deck. If that makes sense.
Well, yeah, that's what. I mean, that's basically what it's a purple deck is a shorthand for.
Sure. I do think I'm giving this a 7.5. I was thinking like, oh no, 8, but I feel like it is ultimately. I feel like I have to rate it similarly to Big Red, if that makes sense. I have to rate it adjacent to Big Red.
Yeah.
I think the decks are not different enough for me to meaningfully rate one above another.
All right, so let's move on to the next deck. Crush Castles, Mario Aristocrats with the Nihilistic Shock Trooper.
So Eli keeps showing up in these lists, and I'm always like, why do we ever want to play Eli in these lists?
I guess it technically makes artifacts.
It makes artifacts that sacrifice themselves.
Okay, I would rather
do with what the deck is.
I would rather play more good cards that do that instead of playing Eli Windsor's Lone Gun.
Like Dawson?
So being serious for a second here, MacGuffin was a big fan of Aristocrats back when it was, meta, and before there was too much interaction against it, like Metal Munch. Towards the end of playing that general archetype, MacGuffin started to pivot more into an artifact style. But the artifact variant Aristocrats that MacGuffin played was not this. This is something different.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, this is something that is way worse than MacGuffin's artifact-based Aristocrats.
I think there are a couple cards in this list that I have a fairly strong distaste for. I think one of them is Eli Windsor's. I don't think you should ever put this card in your MSEM deck. Unless they print a 2-drop that says when a bullet deals damage to your opponent, you win the game.
Huge.
Until the day we see that happen.
Bullets you control have player death touch.
Exactly.
Well,
Until that happens,
well, no,
then
if
I'm comfortable saying that I'm never put. I don't think you should ever put Eli Windsors in your deck.
if that happens, then you should put Marion in your deck instead, because that's a 2-drop that makes a bullet.
Untapped.
There
Yeah,
is something else. There is something else. One thing that this deck does that I don't believe I saw any of MacGuffin's decks do is it's specifically trying to build around Dawson's Collector. And what Dawson's Collector does is when you sacrifice your third thing, each opponent sacrifices something, which
I think you'd
is
still.
nice.
I think you actually would want Lich more than that in that kind of deck, because and there is no Lich and there is no Channeler, which is perplexing to me.
Weird, yeah.
It's deeply, deeply perplexing. I don't know why you would ever want to
Also,
play.
they're just like not sack outlets.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Like,
Is that there are not sack outlets?
They just straight up are not, right? Am I missing something?
Dawson's Collector lets you sack on
there's
attack.
no autumnal, there's no imp den.
But like in the entire deck, there just are not sack outlets.
Yeah.
No, they are not sack outlets. You are.
I guess collector attack trigger.
Dawson is technically a sack outlet.
When I had played against this deck, it was mostly relying on Dawson's trigger. Both Dawsons, by the way. It was relying on Dawson's Collector's attack trigger. It was relying on Lord Rickard Dawson's loyalty abilities, and it was relying on the fact that a lot of artifact tokens. Yes, Crush played this last GP, Herver. And is mostly relying on the fact that a lot of artifact tokens sacrifice themselves. That said, when I had played against this last GP, the deck didn't seem to stand much of a fighting chance.
Yeah, I'm trying to phrase this in a way that is as kind as possible. But when I played against this deck last, it sort of felt like my opponent didn't do anything the entire match. And again, that could have been variance. Maybe there is a sort of a secret to this deck that I'm not getting, but I kind of doubt it, because I think that this deck is not very good. And if you are looking to attain competitive success with an Artifact Aristocrats deck, this is not where you should be at all.
I actually think Artifact Aristocrats as a concept is not bad.
Yeah, it's really good.
I don't think so. I don't think so either. But this deck is not playing any of the cards that make that deck good, except
no, I agree. I also think if you want to be playing Artifact Aristocrats, you should be playing Observer Bounds.
Like a 4. I'd say this is unfortunately a 4.
I'll give it like 2 chili peppers because it's interesting, but I don't want this. Well, I mean, it's probably not going to perform very well.
Yeah, I think that this deck not having Channeler in it and not having Lich in it is kind of egregious. I think those are very, very relevant parts of the archetype this should be.
Don't forget Vibrant Rapture. Vibrant Rapture in Artifact Aristocrats is a game ender.
Not anymore.
Why not anymore?
Because so the combo does still work, but you need an X2 sack outlet, which the only one of is Channeler. So you'd rather not play that combo, I think.
I see.
Well, are you talking about Vivid March or Vibrant Rapture?
Yeah, they changed the card to say
you can't
X can't be 0.
Cast it for 0. Yeah.
Yeah. So you need an X2 sack outlet, which means sometimes I think the combo is still more worth it than people give it credit for, right? But I think that ultimately it is not a necessity of the archetype by any means at this point in time. Although the deck has cycled through a significant number of other combo options, including the now banned Toka combo.
Vivid March.
Good riddance.
Making a heart with my hands.
Literally banned.
Yeah, Toka, a deck a combo I was trying to keep secret for this GP so I could spike it.
You and 2 other people.
Me and the person I worked with to build the deck, and then somebody else separately, Water the Weeds, I believe, was just like, oh, this combo seems fucked up. And I'm like, well, cat's out of the bag.
Should have also done that to Kalen before the pre-GP patch.
Anyways,
people were talking about Kalen back then too.
Yeah, but they didn't discover the Judge's Decree combo until after the patch. So
Yes.
Yeah, True posted about that, and then I realized that Judge's Decree was a card that existed, and then I put it in the deck.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pipsqueak is on a control deck. Probably one of the few control players in this format that actually consistently plays control.
Well, we have the big sort of news with this deck seems to be the 3 copies of Salome as win cons.
Wait, you pronounced it Salome? I pronounced it Salome.
I don't know what it is.
Okay, what is it supposed to be pronounced as?
Not make the set. Hey Zangi, if you're in chat, please give us
Salome
a pronunciation.
Salome, yeah.
Salome actually seems more like reasonable, but okay. Either way, this card's fucking incredible. If you resolve it, your opponent is going to have a hard time not drowning.
It's true.
So, can you describe the usual turn when this card
the usual
resolves?
turn, by my estimation, would be play it for 6, +1, untap 2, play a 2-drop, and then you can activate it again, +1, untap 2, and then play a 2-drop on your opponent's turn, +1, untap 2. And then if your opponent is doing anything, you can also just doing anything with creatures, you can -4 to make that no longer happen.
Yeah.
Salome is a very powerful win con. The rest of the deck is sort of it seems to be a base. Oh no, it is just Grixis. It is a just Grixis heart attack list.
Specifically, it's a list that's bent to service the deck building needs brought on by Cosmic Coalescing, which is a very powerful card.
It's built to service those, and it is also built to service the deck building needs of casting a card that costs 2 blue, black.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunately not Heart of Jadina, man.
Good.
You can't Shanjuns for the tail side of Panya, right? That's not a thing.
No, that's not how tails work.
Yeah, right.
You check the legality of the types.
It works.
Well.
It works with It works
with Little Pig.
With adventures.
Not anymore.
Yeah, but not the other way. Oh, right. Wait, this got changed?
Yeah, it got changed. So I was actually on the receiving end of this. Publishing press was another example of something that had to get changed. These copy effects now, because adventures are rules schlock, you have to check the legality of the spell on resolution as well. And that is meant to guard against adventure nonsense in general. I believe it was Tower between that and Pig that got changed, not Pig itself.
Yeah, Tower of this guy got changed after I won GP with Ramp playing that card.
Yeah. Okay. This seems decent.
I have to give props for 1 Enter Mephisto's Gate. 1
I was wondering about this as well.
This is just technically correct.
Yeah, I guess.
It's quality deck building.
This is so that you don't get sealed the tombed or
You never know
this
when they're going to seal the tomb you're 2 of.
I mean, this is we make jokes, but this is just objectively correct. If you're playing 2 copies of these, you should be. Oh, I should have put Retire in my sideboard instead of Enter Mephisto's Gate, so I could have another act card. Well, I lose again.
Playable metrics.
Yeah, sorry.
I say that while Stat Dex is down.
I lose again. No, but this deck seems solid. It's a pip control deck, which I'm always sort of scared to sit on the other side of the table from, and especially when I'm playing a deck that plays 3 mana X1 these days.
Big.
Well, I hope we don't match up against one another until top X.
So 3 chili peppers because I don't want to watch this deck.
3 chili peppers because I do want to watch this deck.
But don't want to sit across from it.
4 chili peppers because it's trying something new. Salome is ultimately new stuff.
I want to see this deck in action. I would just rather not have that action be happening to me.
Oh, did Neon just win? Yeah, Neon Blue just won.
Neon just won a game. Oh, well.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to Neon's deck yet, have we?
We haven't, but it's technically the most winning deck in the. Yeah, it's technically the most winning deck we have so far.
And turns out Requiem is the most losing deck right now.
Yeah, Requiem was on Kalen.
So currently, Kalen has the.
All right, someone found the answer.
Somebody found the
As
answer.
we know.
Kalen is dead. Smile.
As we know, statistics is when you draw conclusions from a sample of one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
That's the MSEM way.
It truly
That's
is.
the magic way. That's the magic way. Just in
Um,
general.
According to science, Kalen is the worst deck.
Yeah, 0% win rate.
Do you want to get?
At this rate, Kalen will have a negative win rate.
Do you guys just want to jump to Neon's deck so we can talk about it and get Neon in
Yeah.
voice chat?
No, let's continue as normal.
What is the answer?
Come on, let's just jump there.
This deck
Okay, we should go back though because there are some decks I have thouts about.
Yeah.
It's
Neon.
Assemble the Party.
Huh.
It's Assemble the Party. Interesting.
Assemble the Party being a new card from MSL, which is a GSC that is discounted by the number of legendary creatures you control. Generally good. GSCs tend to be strong.
I'm a little suspect on some of these tutor choices. I will not lie to you. I think that you should probably be on more copies of Henry and not Ol Sycamore.
What's that card do?
Hey, what's up, guys? It's your boy.
Yeah,
I
we're
saw
talking
you
about your deck
talking
right
about
now.
my
Can you
deck.
tell us about the deck?
We were talking about you.
Talk
Yeah,
about the
we're
most
talking
winning
about
deck in
the
the
deck
GP so far.
I did. I'm currently up a game in the GP.
Yeah.
Technically first, I think. So
Yeah, you are
Obviously
the
kind of
most
depends.
winning player in the GP.
You're the best player ever in the history of MSEM, according to statistics.
yeah,
No,
very
that's
real and very true
That's
statistics.
the words.
Yeah.
You know, I have won a GP, so I'm basically. Anyways,
So tell us about how your deck
assemble
works.
on my party till I jack. All right, so it's pretty simple. In concept, at least. We have a bunch of legends.
I can see.
A ton of legends because we have assemble the party. And what we want to do is we just want to put as many legends as we possibly can onto the battlefield, and then use assemble the party to draw into kind of like legends don't have really good like overrun effects besides Who's Fu, which takes a little bit to get there, but there are ways to like pop off. Crewmaster Gilo, I used to have 4 copies in the deck, but I got sick of drawing duplicates. So we have 2 and 4 assemble the parties. Basically, the whole idea with this deck is we just want to play good cards, and hopefully once we have like a bunch of stacks pieces and hate bears, we can use assemble the party to either find the right kind of hate bear or just like whatever we need to win.
So Jack or
Usually
Gilo.
ends up being like UJ to give my whole board evasion, or sometimes Crewmaster Gilo, or oftentimes Jack. Jack is very strong in this deck. You'll notice that I have 1 Cloudsteel Summit. You don't usually cast Jack. It's possible. You have enough random fixing that you can do it, but most of the time you're just grabbing him as a one-of with Assemble the Party. But I do want to be able to hard cast the majority of my deck, so that's why
There's the nice sort of implicit design synergy there. You don't want to include too many legends because you don't want to draw too many duplicates, so toolboxing with GSC makes a lot more sense. Hence, assemble the party. Cool design.
I'm actually really surprised that you managed to make Assemble work. Like, this is basically 5-color legends, but toolboxier.
Not 5 colors.
Yeah, but not as aggressive, and in exchange more toolboxy. Now,
and more hate berry.
I think the absence of Matia is noteworthy. I don't know why that is quite. And I also think that with Assemble the Party, right? You have less of the fucked up with capital F and U Jack starts, and you don't get access to EMA.
Emma.
in exchange,
Emma the Traveler.
Yeah.
yes. But in
You're not drawing
exchange,
5 for 3 mana.
yeah. But in exchange, you get to hose certain archetypes that can be hosed in very straightforward ways, right? By just searching for the card that does that. Like if there is a storm adjacent deck in this GP spoilers, I think putting Henry into play would probably significantly benefit you in that matchup. It's too adjacent.
Well.
It's too adjacent for me to recommend Zaukar over Henry, is what I will say. But Zaukar does. Again, spoilers. We'll get to it. But yeah, no, I think this deck is mostly pretty solid.
Yeah.
Although I think
Mattia to me just maybe I'm sleeping on it, but just reading it, I was like, I would have rather had something like Luna that protects itself better.
To me, Mattia is the best green legend in the format.
I agree.
Short form explanation of this because I put way too much thought into the Legends deck. It's my baby. I will try to keep it brief, but TLDR, it shores up your matchups against counterspell decks by giving you a threat that they have to answer on their turn, on their own end step, which means they tap out, which means you can resolve your Jack, or you can resolve your Emma, or whatever. It sort of it demands an answer on its own because it is a reasonable grow threat. It lets you sort of protect creatures from weird toughness interactions. It can give you a significant amount of weird sort of corner case interactions. Like as an example, if there is a Metal Munch, which is a card people are probably going to bring in against any variant, any deck with Jack in it, right? You can protect yourself from the Metal Munch. If there is a sort of Sheldrain's Rage, you can save an important creature from the Sheldrain's Rage. If there is a block that is unfavorable, you can save a creature from that unfavorable block. And even like just again as a 2-drop threat, I think Mattia kills people way faster than you think. Although maybe again, I will give some credence to the fact that your deck is significantly tighter on in terms of what you have room for.
Yeah, like Mattia is probably the
cuts with this deck hurts.
Like
Because you
Mattia,
probably want to have 3 copies of Mattia if you're playing Mattia.
Yeah.
And because you want to draw.
Well, I do. It wouldn't be at flash speed. That's the thing. If I had like 1 copy of Mattia in the deck, it having flash would not.
Well, yeah, and it having flash is the most important part of it. I'm saying, but I don't know. I'm not fully sold on certain choices in your main deck, like Old Sycamore does not feel like a good card to me.
So believe it or not, Old Sycamore is here because it is there's a lot of legendary creatures in the format that are really good, especially after what's it called? After MSL, the MSL season. So we're seeing some more legendary creatures, but primarily it's to hit like legendary permanents. There's a lot of legendary lands. There's a lot of enchantment or story permanents, rather. There's a lot of enchantments. There is, and obviously there's a lot of decks you sign it out for. Like you obviously don't want it in burn, but it also is just a big body.
Personally, I agree with the decision to include Old Sycamore. Something's got to hit the Monument of Queens. Something's got to hit the Villainy, stuff like that.
I just don't think it necessarily should be in the main deck.
I can see that, but I also want to be able to fetch a high toughness creature with Assemble the Party. Because if you look at the rest of my deck, like the 3 is the highest.
They're all kind of
base.
small.
Yeah, so it's good to get that kind of like.
There are times where Assemble's going to be reduced by 4 or 5, and at that point, it doesn't matter.
It's frequent. It's frequent because you have Lisa in the deck, and you have I almost never cast X is almost never. Well,
paid with.
when I have Assemble in the deck by turn 5, it's usually I can usually cast it for like
Yeah.
at least
white,
like X,
get a
like I can
creature.
cast it for like at least X is 5. I can hit almost everything in my deck. So also card that is insane is I'm trying to remember the name. It's
Like how Reinvent used to have a fake X cost.
yeah. It's Queen Enderal this the Fierce.
Yeah, that card.
Pro 3 mana value or greater is protection
Yeah.
is
Pretty
fucked up
good.
and weird, and it also lets you just randomly hose decks.
Oh, yeah.
This is true. I personally would have a very significant difficulty answering a Queen Andoril, although weirdly the card I put in to beat Kaelin also beats Queen Andoril.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Queen.
Shall we move on?
I think a lot
Yeah,
of
we
your
probably
choices in
should.
Hate Bears were inspired. You get the sort of Legends girl seal of approval.
Yeah, I'm gonna like give you 5 chili peppers for gathering the assembled party work in a Legends show, because I said it wasn't possible because that would mean that you need to give up on.
Well, yeah, I don't think it is possible in the Emma deck, but
Yeah.
I think it is possible here. I think
Yeah.
this
So
is.
good on you for making it work.
I think trading off Emma and the other 3 copies of Jack for Assemble the Party is not something I would personally do, but I think this deck has a significant amount of competitive reasons to be played. I think it's a powerful deck, and I hope you do well with it. I would.
Well, I'm already up a game, so.
Good.
Yeah,
I am impressed with the toolboxing Hate Bears.
And currently, I'm impressed by the fact that it has a 100% win rate. But
we'll see how it does.
I was against the enchantments deck with like 1 creature, so don't get too impressed.
We'll come back.
We'll see.
That deck is currently considered pretty good.
Yeah, let's.
Scary.
Before we jumped forward, we were just about to move on to Herver's True Form Is It.
Yes, we were.
Yeah.
And
this is a fairly straightforward cheat deck. What you do is you get a token, and then you either True Form Revelation it or you Space Oddity it.
And you get a Dredgeline Colossus. Now, I have my problems with Dredgeline Colossus as a target over Desert Worms, namely that you have to play 4 copies of this horrible, horrible card to draw. But I think when it resolves, it is actually very powerful.
Is it?
It dies to removal, right?
No, it has indestructible.
It's indestructible.
It dies exile removal.
Which
it dies to some removal.
It dies to some removal, and I think on that front it is actually significantly worse than Desert Worms. But I think its ability to generate card advantage is useful. I think this deck is fine. There are some building choices I dislike. I think there should be 4 Mystery of the Crashed Craft instead of any copies of Stroke of Fortune, for example.
Yeah.
Another notable inclusion in this deck is Paul.
Paul?
I think Paul is a stronger card than everyone's giving it credit.
No,
let's talk about Paul for a moment, because Paul is a new card from Act.
Yes, Paul is a 2-mana planeswalker for Is It? 2 loyalty, +1 to loot, and 0 to turn into a prowess 2/2. It -3s to sort of regrow a sorcery or an instant, and most notably, when they die, they will they will give you the opportunity to discard a card to return them to the battlefield with 1 loyalty. This is an incredibly useful ability for a planeswalker to have. It means that you can ensure that Paul survives combat. It means that Paul is basically the perfect polymorph target.
Yeah.
Also, you could have called this deck Polymorph, PAULYMORPH.
Okay, now I'm calling it that, and so
yeah, call it that in the document. Call it that in the coverage. Call it that forever. But I think. Okay. So
5 chili peppers.
Still back to being articulate. I think Paul is the perfect polymorph target because Paul is very hard to put down, but without specifically instant speed exile removal or explicit non damage planeswalker removal, which is more niche. Than
if you can't catch Paul on the turn that they come down, you'll have to get them twice, basically.
Now, what you can do is frequently, if you can answer, this deck has significant weaknesses, some of which can be checked up to the way it's built. Dredgeline Colossus means that frequently they spend 4 mana and 2 cards to put a creature into play that then gets got by a single piece of exile removal or an edict.
soon.
And that sucks. Which is again why I would prefer Desert Worms to this. I know I keep harping on it, but you know, Desert Worms you only have to play 1 of. Paul can shuffle it back into your deck. It can shuffle back into your deck after an exeunt. It makes multiple bodies, so an piece of exile removal doesn't stop you. But I think this deck is fine. I would give it a 6.5 or a 7.
I'm also extremely. Why is it running Fortuna's Flames? What does that card do?
I don't know. I think that card actually sucks. I forgot that they're still playing. Don't play Fortuna's Flames.
I think they're trying to flip it off the polymorphs. I don't think that's gonna work out.
That's interesting. You know,
that does actually work, right?
It works, but it's
True Form reveals cards, so it does.
Neat.
I mean, well, no, it's because your polymorph target also just draws you 8 cards.
Well,
like if you're polymorphing, you're probably already winning the game, so you don't need.
Drawing 8.
That's what I'm saying. Is like I think Fortuna's Flames is
Win more.
Yeah, is fairly win more. I think it would be fine if it did anything when it was in your hand, but all it does is make your opponent go, "Huh, neat." When you Valdez it, and then they get to exile it because you revealed it off Valdez.
Wait, that's actually it is Valdez hate, right? Because
I mean, sort of vaguely in the same way that like any burn spell is Valdez hate, but because like
Valdez, if you lose Valdez the creature, it's whatever. The real power of Valdez is pinch.
Anyway,
yeah, let's move on.
Reasonable deck. Not built as well as it could be. Not as lethal as it could be.
Okay, so Giant Poet.
Marina.
So this is another of the anti-greed decks. This is a variant of Temur Tempo. Temur Tempo went through some shakeups within the past few months because of nerfs such as Portal Fracture. Most notably, way back when, it was Bounty of the Gardens that got nerfed, and that was part of the reason why people started running more copies of Mattia. And part of Mattia's general rise to fame. This deck, before Marina and I, Marina being Giant Poet, before we workshopped it, was running some copies of Planet Far, Far Away. This has been a subject of some debate. I'm on the side of you should not be running straight card draw in Tempo pretty much ever. There is some consistency issue in the deck that does not run card draw, but anytime that you are spending mana to draw cards, you are giving up your advantage on the tempo axis to do something worse than most decks can do better than you.
Right.
So while you are so much screwed into praying to the heart of the cards, if you're playing Tempo, Tempo is still a fundamentally powerful deck. For those who are not familiar with the form that Tempo takes in this format, every single card in this deck, every single one of these cards is some form of flash. Your turn consists of playing a land, attacking with any creatures you got, and then passing, because everything you cast is on your opponent's turn. That is the power of this deck. Now, specifically, the sideboard carries some Relic Corrosions. It carries some Reminiscences, because these days you really cannot be caught without Grave Hate. Consider Pod Watcher and similar combos. You really cannot be without the Grave Hate. But besides that, it's fairly standard. You've got the Spell Pierce, you've got extra copies of Solar Flare for your burn matchup, and then there's 4 copies of Still Dependent Ammonium for stuff like Villainy nonsense. Shaw Drains for stuff like go wide with Clerics or with Legends, as we now saw.
Or that Constructs deck that Hidster was playing the other day.
Or Legends, the other one.
Yeah, like it could be anything.
Yeah, just board decks.
Besides that, 4 times Roggers, 4 times Portal Fracture, 4 times Xilong. This is otherwise more or less the standard version of Rug Tempo that's been around for years, adjusted for nerfs and with some numbers shifted around to account for the current meta.
Yeah.
Seems Rug Tempo.
It's a solid deck, and it either performs or never gets what it needs and then runs out of resources.
Seems fine.
Yeah, I don't want to end up on the other side of Rug Tempo ever.
Like I said, it's part of the anti-greed squad.
Because I mostly play decks that like strongly dislike this matchup.
It also eats aggro decks, or it eats like burn decks for breakfast.
Does it not eat aggro decks?
No,
I do
very
not
much
believe in that.
Like, it used to eat
very
burn
much
for
does.
breakfast.
Because you had Bounty of the Gardens, but stuff like Matia, stuff like Qilong Gust, which can save your life against burn, stuff like even as simple as the Solar Flares, or the absolute roughest part is the Veilborns if you're on burn, because burn has such a high density of 1-drops.
Of 1-mana spells.
Yeah.
I don't know about burn in particular, but I think this deck just slaughters creature aggro. This deck slaughters creature aggro. It's very rough.
Even in the current form of both burn and rug tempo just bodies burn day and night. It's not even a contest.
Yeah, rug tempo also slaughters creature aggro. It's very good at beating creature decks in general. What it's weaker against is decks that also play at instant speed, but can also just sort of challenge it more, right? They can challenge it on its own turn more.
So
similarly, it also is weak to decks that can go above it, because it wants to keep games relatively small.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, the big headache for Rug Tempo when I was playing it back in the day was stuff like Work Gates. Well, Work Gates kind of slaughtered everything. Basically, any kind of enchantment shell that ran Embodied Soul, because most of your main board answers in Rug Tempo are anti-creature.
Yeah.
And eventually Relic Corrosion did get added to the sideboard as a result of that meta pressure. But if most of your early game threats are things that have two bodies and or two different types, Rug Tempo is going to have a hard time dealing with you, because Rug Tempo generally wants to keep your entire board empty to give space to its Rogger's tokens. It wants to give space to Panya, just to generally chip away at you while it stops you from doing anything. If you can get early things to stick, it becomes that much harder for Rug Tempo to do basically anything with its game plan.
I think Rug is very bad against 1 and sometimes 2 mana non-creature engines is another thing it frequently will lose to, because
that's definitely true.
I think it also loses to decks that can keep it from keeping the game small, right? And can sort of go ridiculous in a resilient way. One that comes to mind is, I think this deck has a sort of 50-50 at least matchup against Future Theft.
Could you explain that?
Okay, so Future Theft has a lot of spells that can challenge Rug, right? It also has a 1-card win, and challenging Rug on its own turn, or challenging Rug on your turn to have the answer, is one of the things you just have to do against it to not get run over. Because if they're spending mana on answers, then they're not spending it on killing you.
Notably, though, some of the answers in Rug Tempo can also generate threat at the same time if you play into them wrong.
Yeah, like Portal Fracture.
Veilborn is like the main one.
Portal Fracture is another one. Machia, if you're reckless with stuff like Vein Drinker in some decks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think if you want to beat it again, those 1-mana engines are really strong. Or even just like 1-mana very powerful threats. They don't even have to necessarily be value engines, 1 or 2 mana. You want to, like, a Founding Hero resolving on your turn 1 is going to mandate the sort of burn answer very soon, very quickly.
Okay,
if
let's
you like Founding Hero against this deck, why don't you like just a normal creature aggro deck?
Because I think most normal creature aggro decks have threats that are worse than Founding Hero on turn 1.
Okay, can we move on? I think
let's move on.
They have more of them, though.
This is mostly meta talk about the matchups.
Anyway, we have the Gyarados deck.
Who's your average idiot?
Trying to think if I know who that is.
He's a friend of mine.
Yeah, he's a friend of ours.
Oh, so a new name.
Right. So
You've
this
played
is a
before.
reanimation.
Oh wait, no, it's Captain Ajani.
Oh,
It's Captain
Yeah.
Ajani.
Okay.
It's Captain Ajani. Never mind. Not quite a new face then. But this is the Gyarados deck, a deck I sort of as backstory tried to force once upon a time with Gyarados on its own initially, and then what's the other one that puts dragons to play? It's Jund Chang, Wild Tyrant, which is absent from this list in favor of Nova Heart Dragon, which does a similar thing in giving you a respin, but also acts as a haste enabler. I think that's fine. I think the big new thing is also Honor the One of, which is fun. But basically the idea is that this is a variant of Reanimator that, in exchange for playing more bricks, wins the game instantly when the reanimation target comes down. There's no recovery from it. Yeah, I think Gyarados has the problem of that you're playing a million dragons. Although this one is leaner than most, which means it's more likely to whiff, and I think it's not playing Cheng, so it doesn't have the Gyarados redundancy. But maybe you don't need to play Cheng now that Operation 433 is out. Either way, I would like to see it perform. It is a graveyard combo deck that can kill on turn 3, which also means it's a graveyard combo deck that can die on turn 3 to Sheikai's Redoubt.
That's true.
And there's no beneath the Justina, which is a major
a way to actually not get redoubted.
Yeah, which is very, very unfortunate as a choice. But beyond that, I think the deck is fine.
This deck, looks really fragile. There's literally nothing in the deck besides
just the redoubt check.
I mean, it is just an interaction check. Yes.
If you don't have exactly redoubt, you have Spell Pierce and Duress to try to fight it.
Yeah, and you can also just frequently if you are.
I will say that you can actually fight redoubt in this deck sometimes.
I think this deck has an easier time with literally every other kind of graveyard.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not playing beneath the Jadina.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I think you're not stone dead to one copy just because you do have a lot of dragons.
You also have Answer Midnight's
all of these
Call.
Faithful Lootings, so you're usually gonna have.
Although you only have 2 AMC, which to me is a problem. If I were to build this deck, I would probably be on 4.
On
4 AMC. AMC.
Midnight's Call. Yeah.
But beyond that, I think there are some slight choices I disagree with, some less slight choices I disagree with. But overall, the deck is a turn 3 interaction check. Which is just a good place to be in Kalen's world, where in game 1, Kalen will frequently fail that turn 3 interaction
you're just gonna die. Yeah.
That turn 3 interaction check.
Speaking of Kalen, the next 2 decks are Kalen.
Are they the exact same decks? We've
already talked about Kalen.
No. Hersey, of course, built a heavy multicolor
Hersey built
deck with a bunch
one.
of utility.
Okay,
well, we have already talked about, I think, almost the exact 75, except with 3 Concord and 1 Decree instead of 2 and 2.
3 and 1 is the one that I was playing.
This isn't that different from the one we talked about before. Hersey's deck might warrant a bit of discussion, but just a bit though.
It's not Kalen, archetype. It's doing something interesting.
It's Kalen plus Kalen.
It's control with Kalen as a win con with the specific Kalen payoffs of Globe as usual, but also fucking Biohazard and Maze Collection, both of which are pretty brutal with Kalen.
Yeah.
And also, it's very time consuming to resolve Maze Collection, so it's not going to be good for commentary. So I'm just going to give it 1 Chili Pepper right there.
Then you can, then you can start talking about eating Umbreons or whatever.
This is a Codex moment.
Certified Codex moment.
But yeah, the other big sort of there's some weird ass cards in here. I will say there's Viper Ambush.
I mean, you have to kill the Kalen somehow, and like they're gonna attack you with it most of the time.
No, I think Viper Ambush is kind of sick. At least a little bit kind of sick.
I will say it's a lot worse in GP because they're gonna know it exists, whereas in League there's literally no chance that anybody knows Viper Ambush is a card.
Well, yes, but even then they're gonna be like, they might have Celestial Banishment or Journey's End or Cursory Glance, and they're not gonna be like, I have to play around the Viper Ambush unless they've watched this stream and seen us say you need to play.
It's open Decklist, like they're gonna know.
Yes, but
they're gonna forget.
They're gonna forget. It's cognitive load. But what I'm saying is, this is a public service announcement. Do not play around the Viper Ambush because I need a Viper Ambush clip. I need a Viper Ambush clip.
No, don't play around it if we're commentating. You can play around it otherwise.
If no one's spectating the game, play around it. Play around it to your heart's content. But I want to see somebody get got by Viper Ambush in a big way. I really do.
Clouds. I think
this card. I think Counting Clouds is actually extremely good. It is to me, at least, a side/upgrade to Star Jump.
Yeah.
I think it is a Star Jump side grade because it does have a deck building requirement, but in exchange, it is a better card.
I will say that I don't like this in the mirror or the like pseudo mirror. Like, I think this is on.
I think the biohazards really do actually do a lot.
I agree that biohazard is really good.
Biohazard is really good in the Kalen matchup because, again, early you can play it just X1 to wipe out all of the things that are making into an engine with Kalen. I also think that it is the kind of inevitability that Kalen doesn't like to see against other interactive decks because Kalen decks draw a lot of cards and frequently cast a lot of very cheap spells.
Yes.
And so Biohazard will be chunking them.
Matchup, but you don't have the Decree Lock in the late game.
I think you have, but I also think you have Biohazard in the late game.
Right, but
which is also its own lock.
Game than Decree.
Well, no. The lock you have in the late game is Maze Collection, drawing you counter spells.
This is also true, is that Maze Collection is an incredible.
It draws you Mind Rip, and then that locks the opponent.
I think this deck is very strong. I am sort of inclined to give this deck a strong 7.5. Because, again, it's not as unfair as Kalen and as the other Kalen deck, and I think, honestly, if this deck stuck around for eternity, I would be as happy as a clam. But, no, like... I also have to give it 5 chili peppers, and I would even if it was just a regular deck with ambush in it. But it is also besides the silly goofing of ambush, it is also just it is extremely good and cool. Compliments to the chef if they're watching this. Hersey, you did a good one.
Okay, let's move on to my deck. It's Black Red Unearth. I mean, I've been playing this deck in League. So
you've been kicking people's teeth in.
So the main difference with this deck from previous versions is that I'm running Cannon War Driver because turns out that there isn't actually that many good Unearthable 3-drops in the format. Like I was super adamant about not playing Crimson Curtain Favored because that card's
that card is better than you think.
Not good. No, I'm with Ricky on this one. That's not a card.
I think we debate. Gal thinks the card's good, but I think the card's bad.
People definitely oversell the Curtain Favored in Burn. Burn does not want to run it.
Don't ever play that in Burn, no. I think it is good in exactly this deck and nothing else in any other context. It's fucking horrendous.
It's good in this deck either. Yeah, I think most of the time they're just gonna not discard any cards, and then you
get to do a big number to them.
You're gonna do 3.
Yes, and that's fine. A 3-mana 4/2 that deals 3 damage
with haste.
It's a 4/2.
The problem is that it doesn't sure you unearth. So it's bad when you unearth it early, and it's bad when you unearth it late.
It's not bad when you unearth it early, though. It's significantly stronger.
more
It's a
relevant
lot worse than
earlier
all of the other
down.
trees.
Okay, so you
I
unearth it
don't
early. What do you
agree
do
with
with your hand? Do you discard the cards that you don't want? Because if you discard them, then you're kind of forced to wheel. If you don't discard, then you're getting in the
I don't
face
think
for a
you're
bunch.
forced to wheel
Discarding
if you
cards you
discard one
don't
free
want
drop.
in your hand is the thing.
I
for
also
an
think
unearthed
you frequently just don't discard and go straight for the burn, and like just acknowledge to your opponent that both of you are just going to be accepting burn as the choice.
I just think that if your plan is to go for the burn on it, it's just not efficient. Like,
I think
yeah.
it is the
I think a
best
3-mana
burn
4/2 that
three
dealt
drop
3
you
to your
have that
opponent
does
would not be
not-
a playable card. And I think this is.
I
not
think
as
it
good as
deals
that.
significantly more than 3.
You know, it usually does around 3 to 4, and then
No,
it also
I think-
hits you in the
my
face.
experience, in my experience, it's done closer to 4 or 5 in the early game.
Yeah. Okay,
Listen.
but then it also hits you in the face for 5, and now you're losing life for Bloodjade Prophet.
Yeah.
Nah, I am significantly more sort of loose with my life total in this.
Okay,
deck
let's stop arguing
I
about
think we are frequently the
Bloodjade.
beatdown.
Yeah, let's not
Or
argue about a
Kurtz-
card that's not in the deck.
So, War Driver, faster beatdown.
I also think, by the way, that Rattler is the other thing I would nominate in Crimson Curtain Favor's slot, and it is very strong.
Okay, so
you would cut Rattlers
so-
for Crimsons?
No, I just think that they have a similar toll on your life total, but Rattler has a unique usage.
Rattler actually does stuff. Like it actually affects the
Yeah.
board.
I think
I like
honestly,
Rattler.
I would have gone for Rattler over Kaijo. I think Kaijo was kind of mid.
Okay, so like back to the original topic
I actually
about
like Kaijo.
Kano War Driver. So what I realized when playing this deck is that hasting a performer ambition is basically the strongest thing you could be doing. So
Yeah,
instead of
I agree with that.
so I decided to add some Cannon War Drives into the deck so I can haste the performer ambition even if I don't have Ghoulish Unearthing. Like this.
Yeah, and we
Well,
like hasting performer is so good that we briefly went slightly off the deep end into the world of playing Artie's Invocation.
see, that was actually a consideration. Before I decided to settle on optimizing Villainy, I was actually looking at Unearth. Is there a way to make Unearth clock even faster? And Artie's Invocation was, well, it seemed somewhat reasonable.
It is reasonable, but I think it is also hard to fit in a way that is not clunky.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the standard Unearth shell just decimates your hand so quickly because that's what your game plan is.
Yeah, I mean,
You're
the
trading
Unearth
cards
is,
for tempo.
Unearth is secretly actually also a soft hand pressure deck. It is an aggro deck, yes, but one of the main ways it beats you is by placing big threats into play that put pressure on the hand. One such card being most notably Performer / Urchin King, but also Augury and Minotaur Skull Smasher.
Yeah, that's also my
And,
other replacement for one of the Crimson Curtain favorite slots.
I think it was also replacing Oil Driller.
Oh yeah, Oil Driller too, because that card just it has the same problem of Crimson Curtain favored where it just doesn't affect the board.
I think Oil Driller is better than Crimson Curtain favored in most scenarios,
Okay,
but I also think Oil Driller just has this unfortunate friction with Ghoulish Unearthing so much of the time, and I don't Okay,
let's stop arguing about cards that aren't in a deck.
It's not even an argument. I think it's just true that Oil Driller has some unfortunate friction with certain cards in the deck that I think makes it reasonable.
But I think
Any other notable includes, Ricky?
No, not really. Everything else is like pretty. Actually, Hydro is really good against Kalen because if you can haste out like Hydro, then you can whack them and make them sack the Kalen.
You can sack the Kalen.
That is funny, and it also can make the Kalen phase out.
Which is pretty.
Which is relevant. Sideboard Herald of Oblivion is the big notable.
Oh, right. I forgot I did that.
That was
made the last minute
tech
change
from this morning. Ricky and I were just sort of in the tank. We're like, we don't want to play these Herald's main, right?
No, we tried to play the Herald's main.
Yeah, we tried to play the Herald's main. You were like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, and then last minute I decided to switch out to sideboard cards for Herald of Oblivion so that I'm better against sideboard Grave Hate by boarding in the one ward driver and the 2 heralds, so that I can like try to
Yeah,
one
and
shot
I think
people.
that's actually extreme. I think
From
that's
hand.
actually very strong.
I didn't
This
know that was a
deck-
card. What the?
This deck can enable Herald. It's very, very easily. The big issue is that you don't want to in a lot of matchups.
Yeah,
because
so that's
you
why
have
it's sideboard.
You have to make intentional decisions to lose more life rather than less, which is not where you want to be in a significant amount of matchups. But in a significant amount of matchups, they are not putting enough pressure on you for Herald to not be crazy.
Or you just bring it in against burn, so that you put them in a catch-20.
It weirdly fills sort of an element of the niche that Umbradu Goliath once played in this archetype.
Jeez.
Way back.
Fucking
What a card.
Umbradu.
It's banned in every format.
Yeah, I
Wait,
wonder
they
why.
banned Umbradu Goliath
Yeah.
at MSEM2?
No,
I
not
don't know
all
what
legal
happened
formats.
to that
Or
card.
no,
Oh,
all relevant formats.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
I'm like doing the motion of like running my hand through the air next to my neck to like telling you to cut the feed. But no.
We just had a set full of legends. Come on.
We just had an MSEDH set specifically. Well,
All right, so that's
Well,
enough about my
standard
deck.
dance,
Even
burn,
in
worry,
a
stun, hand
stream
pressure,
about a
go
custom
tomb, metal
format,
lunge, duress. Nothing else notable
some
here.
people still take the time to dunk on Commander.
anyway, we have
5 chili peppers, and let's give me the
Conflict
rating and
of
move on.
interest, I say.
right rating 7.
Sure.
I think it has a worse time against Shikai's Redoubt than a lot of other graveyard decks, which is what keeps it from being a 7.5. Right?
Yeah.
Because frequently Shikai's Redoubt can be insanely mana positive and tempo positive.
And that's why I run the cannon word drivers now.
Exactly.
Okay, so Epid.
This is labeled a burn deck. I don't entirely agree.
It does win through
Yeah.
burn spells.
This is
It
burn
is-
by a certain
it's
definition
true.
of burn. By that definition, we would also consider heart attack to be burn.
Yeah.
This is true.
It's a big burn.
I know.
I think it
It's
is
the deck he would play.
not burn.
I am surprised this deck isn't playing the bleed ritual.
It's not. It's not that easy to enable bleed on your.
Yeah,
Like,
because this deck also doesn't actually have very
Also,
much
you're playing
burn
Season
in it.
Flames anyway, and
I don't know. I
Look,
also think
I tried to build Mono Red Storm a while ago, and your rituals are terrible, and that card is actually like quite good
I am.
if
But
you
how-
can enable it.
How do you enable it on
You're, like,
your own turn?
already kind of trying to enable it with Unseason Flame.
Attacking with the 2-drops that you have to resolve to win the game anyway.
Yeah.
So you have to wait a turn and actually connect.
I mean, you already
you
have
have
to
to
wait
wait
a
a
turn anyway,
Most of
which
the
is
time.
Okay,
the
but then you have
reason
to
why I'm-
connect.
which is the reason why I'm low on this deck for what it's worth. I think I don't want to ever have to rely on a flatboat artisan. Because that card is like the world's #1 premier removal magnet.
You don't always have to have a reducer in play.
You only have 6
but-
reducers in the deck. Is that
A
enough?
significant amount of your hands are very reducer in a way that I think is not.
I think, honestly, more than being reliant on reducers, this deck is reliant on drawing Culminating Chaos.
This deck is also frequently going to lose to itself.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not a fan of that. I think there are other like all-in turn 3 combo decks that don't lose to Graveyard Hate that I'd play instead. Like for example, sort of the Supernova
Okay.
decks come to mind. But no, I think this deck is not very good.
I think this deck is okay. I think Culminating Chaos is a good enough card that it like kind of carries.
I
But
think to a degree, I think.
I don't know if that's like enough.
I
I'm also not
guess-
really sure what these Galvin coal lines are trying to
It's
accomplish.
to enable
Oh,
Goddess's Whimsy.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I also
okay, I
think
guess-
this is a very bad Goddess's Whimsy deck.
I mean-
Yeah, there are like 4 types.
I think the functional density of this deck is all over the place. I've been considering some concepts such as decks that are a bit more reliant on Amelie, Culminating Chaos, Unceasing Flames, but I don't think this is the way to do it.
What did the
I think
previous
you really have
Not
to.
either.
what did the previous Mono Red Storm deck look like?
Um,
There were a few of them.
it was
Do you
like
mean the one
this,
with
but
purple
Goddess's
flying?
Whimsy. It's like this, but Goddess's Whimsy wasn't nerfed.
Oh,
And Instant of Brilliance wasn't nerfed, which was like really important.
Yep.
right. Okay, no wonder those
It
decks
was,
were
like
better.
a card for this deck because you didn't even always need the combo. You could just Instant of Brilliance, and then it was just like cumulative Grape Shot. You just hit them for 1 all the time. And also, it was a fork, which is already like pretty good.
Wait,
in
it got
the decks
nerfed?
playing
I don't. Oh, it got banned. Never mind. Instance of
It
Brilliance
got
got banned.
banned.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is mostly.
For what it's worth, I gave it a 5.5.
I'll give it like 3 chili peppers. It's sort of interesting to watch because it's a
Anyway.
storm deck.
I do actually have to head out, so I was just
Okay.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Yes.
Now this is my round 1 opponent, Skagra. Now this deck is one of the aforementioned Supernova decks, although it is the deck that is going specifically for Supernova Dragon Calling, which is more difficult than other Supernova lines.
So it's Dragon Storm.
It's Dragonstorm, yeah. It in exchange for being slightly more difficult to pop off with than something like Dragon Calling into Infuse or Dragon Calling into that 7-drop enchantment that gives every creature +4/+4, whatever, is that this deck seems to be in on Eminent Extraction Engine.
Yeah, I was about to mention that as a notable include.
As a target for Relic Heist, which allows you to cast Dragonstorm from your hand without the aid of a Supernova, which I think is... Because I also think that Relic Heist is better at casting Dragonstorm than Supernova, because Supernova has the issue of you actually need more mana after the Supernova to cast a Dragon Calling, versus like the other Supernova decks where your spell is exactly 7 mana.
Yeah.
I think that Eminent Extraction Engine Relic Heist is interesting tech. I would like to see this in action. There are certain things in this deck that I am a little incredulous about, namely the literal 0 interaction main deck.
It's a combo deck. You're not gonna find room for interaction.
I think this deck has room for interaction. But
what are you cutting?
I guess.
What am I cutting?
Some of the combo pieces. You don't need.
I think you should cut down on some of the 7-drops because those are going to brick you. And you're already playing 4 Shimmering Dragon, which are going to brick you.
I guess Capture Brilliance is fine because if you manage to cast it, you probably win.
Probably, but yeah, I think beyond that, I think this deck. I also think that the mana base is slightly sketch. That four Sunset Monastery is maybe too many.
It's fine.
I could be wrong.
Okay, so yeah, I'll give it like 2 chili peppers. Alright, I'll give it 3 chili peppers. It's interesting, kind of.
I'm giving it 3 because of the extraction engine.
I'm giving it 4 because of the Relic Heist extraction engine of chili. As chili peppers go, I think as evaluation goes, I would give it like a 6.5 or 6. But 6, yeah, 6. But cool deck.
Okay, so
I also think it actually is facing a decent matchup game 1. Not game 1, it's match 1, round 1. Because I have a harder time interacting with Storm-style decks, although there are lines that can kind of totally hose them that I have.
You should have played more Spell Hate. You should play Henry in 8 sack.
Oh, I have ways to beat spell decks. Although I probably could play Henry. One of the funniest ways that I can hate on spells is just by removing all of my opponent's lands. Because then you can't cast spells.
Yeah, I guess that also works.
It is a plan.
But it's higher effort than just potting out a Henry.
That's true, but I also think that Henry doesn't win this matchup.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah,
Bravos.
next up is Petra on ramp.
Is this ramp?
This list feels bizarre. I will say.
It is ramp. It's running Jabai, it's running Erlin, it's running Helene. This is straight up ramp.
How does it actually ramp?
Suite feels. I think it's just RFE. Question mark? Yeah, it's just RFE.
It's 3 copies
So
of RFE.
this was a list that was put together by Pipsqueak. She had originally called it Petra Gets a Clue. You can search it in the chat. And one of the game plans here is to grab Erlin, the boy, off of Gerald's Wretched Cure. And what that does, among other things, is turn all your clues into mana sources.
That's on turn 4, right?
Erlin is generally a turn 4 play. Even if you get a RFE out, it's still a turn 4.
How are you ramping early?
You're not.
So that was part of a whole discussion that I think Pip had with Petra. You don't want dorks in this kind of deck.
Hmm.
Instead, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be trying to not die in early game using cards like Crest, like Void Flare, like Qilong Gust.
So that it's not really ramp then. Like, or is it? Can it be considered ramp if you're not trying to ramp early?
If you're finishing off with Jabaya and Erlin, I'd say it's ramp.
But so is the mid-range decks that run Jetbaya. Right? Like, is Heart Attack a ramp deck? Because you could make that same argument here.
No. I don't know.
Okay.
This sort of becomes a very silly conversation very quickly.
Right. Let's not focus too much on labels
Yeah.
right now.
Let's not focus on labels.
But I have outlined the basic plan of the deck. The basic plan of the deck is to not die in early game, get up to turn 4, and mostly use Gerald's Wretched Cure to toolbox stuff like Jabaya and Erlin for its win conditions. Ramp targets include Seeker Elizabeth, well, kind of. It's mostly Seeker Elizabeth's ability. You got Leactra Stormheart in here, and does it? I guess in a certain way you could count Helene Trant.
I feel like a lot of the threats in here feel a little suspect. Most notably, Leactru feels not good.
Bravos was committed to playing this card, so they're just trying to find a good deck for it.
Okay.
Leactru's the bonus sheet card from Heroes of Renatos. I mean, we did have the whole discussion a while back. If you want to see your cards in the format, try building around them yourself.
This is
worth
true.
a shot, though.
Although I don't.
During those discussions, I was somewhat skeptical about Leactru as a ramp target because there are just way more impactful walkers at 4, 5, and 6 than Leactru.
Yeah, I was about to say. I think Leactru is about as impactful as Xanagan, which costs 1 less mana, as an example.
Yeah, but it's not in
It's not in blue-red, but it is in the format, which makes it a consideration, right? You don't just evaluate by color. Although, again, the color difference is relevant in a way that I don't want to sort of minimize. But yeah, if this user was sort of committed to playing Leactru,
this isn't the worst deck for it.
Yes, I was about to say I can't call this the best way to do that because I would be being disingenuous. But it is a way to do that.
Anyways, I'll call it deck teamwork
deck-
clues because that's more.
This deck,
Yeah.
I feel like this deck is like a kind of definitional 5, insofar as it is a collection of mostly unrelated good cards with one piece of synergy, which is that line with the Frog King.
What do you do if that thing gets killed?
You don't.
You only have 1 copy, right? You
Yeah,
recur it
but
at all?
Just don't let it get. Just don't have it get killed. That's fine.
You're going to be relying a bit on Control Discourse for that, and Cane Dancer.
Control Discourse is
So,
pretty interesting.
part of the cards.
Just don't get it killed. That's fine.
Okay, let's move on. Rowan's on -1 Gerard. Wait, what? They're on -1 Gerard champion.
Interesting.
Just dropping in real quick to say that they fixed Rowan's deck, so you should F5 and not see the well, you can check out the broken deck then maybe.
Hello.
Okay.
I can talk about my deck first.
Sorry,
Hello.
just to make sure that we're all seeing the
Hello.
same thing. There are multiple
Yeah.
cards in this deck that say that they're -1.
Oh yeah, they are. They are.
Right?
-1 Barbarian Charity.
27 abhorrent Exuma.
Puppeteering. What is going on?
Okay, so let me just talk through the deck a little bit for you guys. So the Jara champion I've got -1 of because I'm sort of playing a mid-range control strategy. So if I go -1 Jara champion, then I have less creatures, and so
Okay, what about the -1 just business?
How did you do that?
the max. So -1 just business is that you notice that like a lot of decks are going anti-Kalen in the format, and so that means there's not many Kalens in the GP, and so I felt like I didn't need any anti-Kalen tech.
Okay.
And the 48 copies of Wandering Soul.
Well, yeah, so Wandering Souls has synergy with playing multiple copies of it, so I just decided to play 48.
Okay, and the 27 abhorrent Exumers.
27 Boron Exumas. Yeah, I mean, I'm playing a lot of creatures because I've got 27 Boron Exumas, so I need a way to return them.
Okay, seriously though.
What about the 28 Unceasing
What
Flames?
happened? Did Lackey fuck up?
Yeah, so I put in just the Road to Karamapu's Scorch in my deck, and that counts as a token and a card, and so Lackey was like, sorry, I'm just gonna like make your deck this, and so yeah, I got a leyline alignment filter which is banned in MSEM, so
10 potentially
No,
the first.
you have -1 leyline alignment field, so it's fine.
Okay,
Ricky, can I get an extra line? Can I get a line break on this chart, please?
Yeah, I think you just hold shift and return.
Okay, yeah, if you want the actual deck, let's give me a sec.
Well,
Sure.
no, I want you to talk about your 28 Unceasing Flames.
All right, there we go.
Okay, we have to put you on here twice, because
Yeah, so
I do have to rate this deck. I do.
Yes.
So the Unceasing Flames is again, it's kind of like the Lost Souls, because Unceasing Flames is synergized with lots of copies of itself, and so you can just put lots of copies in the deck.
Yeah, I think you're currently the best deck in the. You're currently the best Unceasing Flames deck in the format because you're running 28 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
You're also,
And,
you also
and because
currently have a-
I know people might have concerns about consistency when I have 23 times a Logris title master, but I do have 17 times Blood of Eternity. So I can set a couple of my cards.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, let me find my list.
What a delight! What a delight! Oh, thank you. Oh, that's very good.
Okay.
Okay, so it's basically Pipsqueak's JetBlue Fever Dream, just cut to I cut to Last Request in favor of to Renzai. So if you just I just sent brought basically the deck in.
All right. Yeah.
voice chat, and it's just that. But I swapped to the last request outfit of the Planeswalker because me and Pip were talking about potentially
Right, so-
putting in another green
Hey,
Not so
Planeswalker.
much
can you
Rampy.
fix it? Can you fix the list already? Please refresh the page. Can you fix the list?
Okay, refresh it.
It was funny while it lasted.
Yeah,
I
that's
think I'm just gonna screenshot this just for
Yeah.
posterity.
Yeah, please. I need this as sort of a memento.
I've been sitting on the stream this whole time cooking up like what I was gonna say when you guys got to this deck.
Thank you.
Yeah, seems like you improvised or you prepared well because I definitely could have not improvised that.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
here we are.
that was a
I've got
very
the
strong
paste.
bit.
The paste for posterity.
Okay. Yes. The most powerful deck in MSE. But instead of that, you have submitted, it seems, JetBlue, which is a deck named as much because I believe Pipsqueak built this on a plane.
Yeah, or it was either on a plane or just after getting off a plane. And being
It's
very
another
tired.
Gerald deck.
Not a what? Sorry.
It is another Gerald deck. We were
Yes.
discussing
Yeah,
one
yeah.
way earlier.
Well, actually, it's two Geralds.
It is. This
I
is
would use Gerald Wretched Cure because it's Gerald Fugitive is the best, like basically the best target for it. So
yeah, I know. I agree with that. That Gerald is the best Gerald Wretched Cure target.
Flavor
but
win.
You are also playing Posey, Beck, and Zheng Mao, and all of these very powerful targets. I think this deck is solid. Actually, I think this deck is very solid. I think this will have a.
I haven't lost a game with it yet in League. I've played 3 matches. So it's not a huge sample size, but not lost a match. Sorry. So it's like, and yeah, it's felt pretty solid so far.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I'll give this deck a real solid 7 or 7.5, and a real solid 5 peppers.
Yeah, I'll give it 5 peppers.
I don't have a slot for that because for posterity I am leaving my rating initial deck list.
You can just make a clone of
Yeah,
it.
no worries. Thank you very much.
All right, 07 and what have you. Ugh. You couldn't ask for a better injection of content, could you?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next deck is Toasties. This is
Somebody once
Reanimator?
told me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward cheat deck.
Oh, it's just Eureka Tell.
It's Eureka Tell with Springtime.
With Springtime, but most notably Eureka Tell with Krateri Restoration as a method by which to both ramp and sort of act as a Eureka spell.
No, you're never gonna get to enough mana to cast those things even off the Restoration.
No, this deck does do that.
Do you have the right mana colors?
Yes. This deck did that before all of that, but yes, this deck can be casting Valiers and Cranes and Azoses, which is strong, although I think, unfortunately, Krateri suffers from your opponent getting the first crack at it.
Yeah.
But,
hey,
this deck is classic solid deck.
I mean, if your opponent can't really interact with your hand, then it's fine if your opponent gets a bunch of mana.
After that is... I was just
also 7.52 pepper.
I was just double checking the sideboard here, but nothing too outlandish there.
Kalen, but with Barks in it.
Wait, what?
And this is Kalen, but with Barks and Seto-san.
You see up to forward 1. Hister is doing Chariot.
Oh yeah, this deck, right? I remember seeing it.
No, this is a different Chariot deck. Actually, this deck is straight red-white and is playing a number of suspect cards, like Fidelity of the Pure. But I also don't think this deck quite has enough ways to produce tokens. It's just self-replication and
HopeSpot.
And HopeSpot, which is not enough. Not nearly.
Chronicles also counts, but
It makes tokens singular. I
yeah.
said tokens.
So, do you think it's just it's a less good version of the Naya version of this deck?
Yes, I am inclined to say yes.
I mean, what do you get from cutting the green?
Nothing.
I guess your man's slightly better.
Kind of, I guess, but you also are. They cut a lot of the good red and white cards from it as well. Seems I don't quite understand that. Like the something of the Fair Prince, whatever, is a very powerful card that is in these colors, but I feel like this deck does not have enough ways to put tokens onto the battlefield.
Yeah,
is my big thing with it. I think it can win games, right? But I think it will likely,
Yeah. All right, I'll give it
likely be worse at winning games than counterparts.
Well, props for building around Chariot.
I think Chariot's a really, really powerful card.
Yeah.
I was wondering when we were going to see one of those because there was a bit of a hubbub about Chariot. It had a bit of an oversight infinite loop within it that got fixed, of course. It could just there was some ambiguity about how crewing was defined. And by a certain definition, you could interpret it as just untapping any number of creatures crewing it as many times as needed.
Yeah.
But even without that, the card's a 2-mana anthem. Of sorts,
that is also a 3/2
body.
And that's incredible. This card's great.
Someone managed to did they 5-0 league with a Naya version of this deck?
Yeah, Hidster, the same person, which is why partially why I'm so confused why this deck is
maybe
worse.
it is better, but like because they're the ones that they're the one that 5-0 league with it, so maybe they know something that we don't.
But I sort of doubt it.
We'll see how it performs.
Maybe just the raw power of this many 1-mana tokens, like with Kitsune plus the Goblin Chariot. Maybe that's all you need.
Maybe.
Okay, moving on.
Based on my experience, you need quite a lot of ways to make 2 tokens for 1 card with Chariot.
Mm-hmm. So Wizerinus is Kalen plus Barks.
Hey, it's a deck that they won the GP with like 2 years ago or something. Is it 2 years or just 1 year? I forgot. Well, whatever. It's not like time passes anyways.
No, it doesn't. This stream actually takes place inside of a time-dilated bubble.
Powered by me.
Thank you.
It powered by sort of burn math. We're actually inside the StatTrek hypergeometric calculator right now.
So now we're trying to calculate how well this deck will do.
Yeah, so this deck, is it the exact same?
Of course not. It's new cards.
There is Barks, there is Arrive. There's Barks, which is unique from other Kalen decks, and unique from the other version of this deck is Arrive, surrounded by petals, and Judge's Decree. And Ayala's Concord.
Yeah, so Ayala's Concord fetches out Kalen or Judge's Decree.
Or Seto-san.
Oh yeah, that too.
I think the implementation of Dawnhill Forge Master is a little underbaked in this deck. I think they have not gone in enough to justify it for me, because the deck already has a lot to do with its mana, and currently they're just doing the Dawnhill Forge Master 1, 2, 3 lines, which I'm not excited about.
What, they have Rod
Mostly there because it overlaps with Seto-san, I believe.
Yeah, their pieces overlap with Seto-san, but I think they're playing 2 Seto-san and 4 Forge Master when I'm going to be playing 4 Seto-san and 2 Forge Master.
Are they not playing Death Pit's Trophy?
No, they are not.
I don't believe so.
Because it's not, which they for sure should be.
Yeah, they can easily splash that, I think.
No, very easily. Shio no Shio is interesting. I've never actually played against this card when it's gotten to flip. if I'm going to be honest.
I don't think you need to flip it. You just stick this onto Kalen and then start swinging with a hexproof flying life
Well,
linking
yes, I'm
Kalen.
like what I'm saying is mostly that Shio no Shio gets got before it can get to swing. But yes. Anyway, there are 2 Kalen decks in a row there.
Well, so something interesting about Kalen plus Barks is that you can use Barks to exile something and then use Kalen to pick it up during your opponent's turn so that you can get an artifact ETB during your opponent's turn.
Yep.
That's why I'm really surprised about not running Death Pit Trophy, because then you can try to draw step block your opponent that way.
Yeah, which is something I was doing in the other deck. It's something I was doing in Esper Kalen deck that I was playing, which was very powerful. Draw step blocking people is strong. I think it is just less unfair than these Kalen decks at the moment. It's much more of a sort of fair, grindy greed pile, which, if they hit Blossoming Expanse and Judge's Decree and not Kalen, then I would be happy as a clam. Because then that deck would get to survive, but if it doesn't, fair game.
Okay, so...
And then there's regular Kalen again, which we've discussed.
Is it the exact same? Yeah, seems like
it's exactly the same as one of the other lists, yeah.
Cool, let's move on.
Well, we have Space Princess.
That's what...
Spaceless Princess to be exact. This no longer runs Thunder Road, I believe.
Because Thunder Road's got nerfed.
Because Thunder Road is marginally weaker now, and that you can no longer do a 3-for-1 on your opponent's turn.
Well, yes, but this deck, to be fair, does very specifically want to play at instant speed.
Yes, though I think that dropping Thunder Roads after such a small nerf, comparatively, is kind of a mistake. Thunder Road, for God's sake.
I think Thunder Road probably could have moved to the sideboard instead of being cut. Just because it's less good as a straightforward burn spell in this deck now, and better as a creature hoser.
Yeah.
But what this deck has gained in the meanwhile, it's put a Paul also.
Yes, it's inserted Paul, which we've discussed the merits of previously. And it has slotted in more copies of its Planeswalkers. I believe it was only on 2 Ajani, and now it is on 3 copies of Ajani the White Buddhist and 3 copies of Paul Rock Bottom, which are is I think Ajani Enlightened is a very, very I think it is slightly less silly without Thunder Road in the deck.
It's still a sort of free bit of life gain late game, since you can untap for your interaction to cover your ass.
Yes.
Card is straightforwardly good.
Yeah.
Just the untapping can no longer chain into Road quite as easily.
Toast just won against Captain Johnny, if that matters at all.
Congratulations, Toasty.
So that's Eureka wins against where's Captain Johnny? This isn't sort of alphabetical order. I can't find people.
Hold up.
What?
Against dragons.
Toasty lost.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
it looks like Eureka lost against Reanimator Toe.
And dragons lost against the other dragons.
No, in fact, I'm gonna blame Ricky for this. This has nothing to do with Toasty.
Dragons lost against Gyarados, which means that the Dragons deck was beaten by the Dragons deck. But I mean 2 extremely different decks when I say that. Anyway.
Yeah, let's move.
Also, this deck doesn't actually have a Yuri in the sideboard, which is unusual.
Yeah, the
styles.
Yuri thing here is just... I don't know what's going on here.
I'm saying it's unusual. It's unusual for Styles to not put a Yuri in the sideboard to promo.
What?
We have
Excuse me? What's happening?
we have Ninjas by Zangi.
Hey,
Gotten,
is it ninjas?
yes, it is Ninjas.
Yes,
We have
actual ninjas. We've got Shinrei here and everything.
We got Kalen in
uh,
ninjas.
yes, because Kalen does the ninjas thing very well. Now, this deck has an upgrade, which is Royal Doctor, which is it has two upgrades: Royal Doctor and Backstage Comic, which is a slight upgrade over the previous Relentless Rats this deck was playing. But Royal Doctor is a threat. I think this deck is powerful. I think this deck has very powerful value loops it can play. I think this deck is more threatening than it's ever been.
Yeah,
I think the implementation of Profane Emissary is good and correct. I think the implementation of Kalen is good and correct. I think Royal Doctor gives you a level of pressure that you were lacking sometimes. I am not exactly sure on the correctness of moving away. You only have one backstage comment.
Yo, you're cutting out.
KO, could we get a quick repeat of what you're not sure about moving away from?
You might want to reconnect.
I'm not sure about moving away from the draw step block aspect of this deck, because there is only one copy of Backstage Comic in this deck as opposed to the 2 or 3 that you would usually see of a similar effect. I'm not sure how much that's going to matter, given the Void Portals and given that the deck has become significantly more aggressive. Right? It is no longer sort of just trying to grind your opponent to dust. Like, you are playing a number of threats that can beat your opponent to death.
Mostly in intervals of 4.
Maybe giving your up your draw step block is going to matter. And I would like to know if it does or does not.
All right.
I'm impressed with the deck. I'm
impressed with the deck too.
On the Kalen craze.
I also think Ninjas is very strong. I think Ninjas is a very strong archetype. I think mostly that Ninjas is a very strong archetype off of the back of Grandma Suzume, whatever the name of the card is.
Suzume Arashoko?
Suzume Ashikuruko. Is a very powerful card. I think it's very, very difficult. It makes it very difficult to interact with anything but it in a similar way to Kalen. And Kalen does the same thing, so playing Kalen in the deck is natural. I also think this deck weirdly likes having Profane Emissary into Jejun as an option.
Yeah, because it gives it a big flying beater.
Yeah, and this deck is much more aggressive already.
Okay, I think we've said about all that there needs to be said about the Ninjas deck.
Oh, Cyber.
Sai was workshopping this right up until the last minute. It is another Salome deck, or Salome. I'm sorry, Zanky.
Salome.
I should have asked you sooner.
Is it Salome or
I don't know.
Zang's in chat right now. Zang, is it Salome or Salome? Well, anyways, let's continue talking.
Sylvester Salome. So this is mostly. I'm going to include Sai in the anti-greed squad because I had conferred with them a bit about building control, functional density. You'll notice that this deck is packing a ton of interaction. It's mainboarding stands, it's mainboarding rift splicing, it's even mainboarding celestial banishment.
Yeah,
it is out. It is out for blood for all the meta options we've seen so far. Kalen, the recent variations of Burn, all that is taken into consideration. This is the sideboard and main board. It's even got Rot.
Multiple copies.
So this, similar to Pip's deck, is mostly looking to stall until Salome can come in and finish off the game with instant speed wipes.
Yeah.
As for the actual win condition, that seems to mostly be Revelations.
Yeah,
and the lands.
This deck seems very, very strong. It is less flexible than Pip's list, but in exchange is sort of playing more main deck rots. I'm kind of low on main deck stand unassailable, but I am also not a control player, so I don't think I can fully comment. Powerful deck. Don't want to be on the other side of it.
I'm not certain, but I respect the hustle of putting the sideboard to main board, more or less. There was a brief discussion, actually, when I was conferring with Sai on what the villainy deck should look like. We had wondered for a moment if it was worth putting Stand Unassailable in the main board.
Your villainy, no.
Ultimately, I went against it, but Sai, you can see here, decided to go with Stands in the main board.
Yeah. Well, it technically is a win condition. Technically.
Just like every other revelation. Revelations are just automatically 3-for-1s by their very nature.
Yeah. So
the bad news is you can get redoubted to an extent. Praxias is another good option in that vein.
Anyway, we have another sort of suspect-looking combo deck.
Hey, look, it's Chiara. Chiara plus Seek the Maker's Egg.
Yeah, we have the Steward of Empire's Cradle Seek the Maker's Egg interaction, which has been nerfed to no longer mill your entire deck. But in exchange, or not in exchange, just unrelated, this deck is playing Chiara, and is instead just trying to put Rule the World and Polytheism into play. But I'm going to be honest, I don't think these targets are it. I don't think these targets actually are very good or worth the potential redoubt losses that you're taking on by playing a sort of reanimation strategy.
Yeah, with Egg. But if you were to replace the target, what would you...
If I were to replace it, well, for one thing, I would probably make this deck less all-in if I were to build it, because I think it's very easy to build a Seek the Maker's Egg list that is trying to do unfair things with it, that also has a fair plan, right?
Okay.
And as such, one of the targets is always going to be, to me, Observer, because Observer is a card you can cast fairly, right? But you can also sort of just put it into play for 3 mana with Seek, and that is very strong. I think Polytheism is significantly better than Rule the World. If I'm honest, I'm not super high on Rule the World. I think other options include you could play Artificer's Gift and the Artificer's Gift target head of Ulko, right? As a potential target. I also think if you are willing to play an uncastable target, right?
I think that head of Ulko sort of fell out of favor at one point. Some people started being a bit lower on it.
Yeah,
it is a bit slow.
It is a bit slow. No, I agree. And I think this deck actually weirdly would benefit from playing Eminent Extraction Engine as a Artificer's Gift, or rather a graveyard-based Artificer's Gift deck that is hypothetically extant would benefit from Eminent Extraction Engine, as displayed earlier. Yeah. It would also benefit potentially from... I'm sorry, I am blanking on names right now. Okay. Dredgeline Colossus. If you want if you want an uncastable target, Dredgeline is a pretty decent one, although it doesn't win the game as fast as I would maybe like. Although honestly, if I were to build this, I would probably play significantly more conservatively, insofar as my targets would be Seismic, Colossus, and Observer, more than likely.
Okay.
But again, I think mostly that currently the Polytheism kills are cool, right? But but Rule the World I'm just so low on, right? I think I've seen it in Eureka Tell as well. I just don't.
I've never lost to it yet, though that's more an indication of how I need to play more games. It's always been a card that, the way it's written, has concerned me. It is very intimidating.
It's an intimidating card. I also think, unfortunately, what it does is non-lose, not win.
Joe, you're cutting out again.
It non-loses. It does not win. Is my big issue.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I guess.
And I am not a fan of reanimation targets that non-lose. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
I would prefer reanimation targets that win.
I see. I don't play Reanimator all that much, so I trust you.
I think, for example, an Azos, which you can't play off of Seek, but you get the idea, wins by proactively dismantling your opponent's game plan and leaving you with a large body. This just dismantles your opponent's game plan and leaves you with turns.
All the time in the world, and nothing to do with it.
Yeah, and all the time in the world for your opponent to find a disenchant. Right?
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
I'll give it 3 chili peppers. Like it might be interesting to watch.
5.5, I'd say at the moment. 5.5 or 6.
Also, like fill in Cyber's deck, and we're done, I guess.
And we're done. A smaller GP than the previous one.
Still took 2.5 hours.
Still took 2.5 hours. It's part of it is that we spent about 10 minutes talking about dragons and about 10 minutes talking about Kaelin.
And then 5 minutes talking about Crimson Curtain favored.
Yeah, and then about 5 minutes losing our shit about -1 Jara champion. All of which I think were reasoned uses of time. But yeah, I think that is a complete Decklist stream.
Yeah, and if there's nothing else to talk about,
gonna look like?
Well, I mean, I feel like the Kaelin deck is probably going to get at least one top 8 just by sheer numbers.
I mean, I don't like predicting who's going to be in top X or who's going to win because I think it just sort of happens at random.
No, I'm not thinking along those lines. I'm more thinking about
not at random, but you get
generally how some decks will interact.
I think if you're thinking about matchups, I think that we are going to see a lot of people figuring out how much of a head Kaelin mirror is. We are going to see a lot of people figuring out whether or not they can position themselves correctly as the beatdown against Kaelin in a way that is fast enough.
Yeah.
And we're going to see a lot of people losing to Kaelin. Although one of the Kaelin players has been bumped down to X1. There still are 3 remaining, or 3 or 4.
We counted 4 Kaelin decks total, I think.
Weren't there? We have so we have Kaelin, Ninjas, which is also playing Kaelin, so it's kind of half of a Kaelin. Hersey's deck, which is also playing Kaelin, so it's half of it. So I say 4 if you count half Kaelin.
Okay, 3
5
true Kaelins and 2 quasi Kaelins.
Yes. Yeah. So 4 Kaelins if you count the quasi Kaelins as half. 5 if you count them as 1. Well, may the best Kaelin win, I suppose. And goodbye.
Yeah, and with that, thanks for watching, guys.
Shout out to the Anti-Grease Squad.
Yeah.